test all three, we find out that the running is the weakest, but they think it's the best. So it depends on what how you want to do. Usually, I recommend starting with your weakest. Whatever you feel is your weakest that you need the help with, that's the first assessment you should get. But ideally, as a real triathlete, you should test all different sports, all running, cycling, and biking, or running, cycling, and swimming. So that's a good question. Unfortunately, like I said, it's different range of motion. You know, you're sitting on the bike. So it's a cardio activity, obviously, but it's different than running, which is completely weight bearing because you're generating your own force from your body the entire time. Yeah.
Will the biking test give you some idea about how to more effectively use the power meter?
Absolutely, yeah, because we correlate everything to power or heart rate. For a bike test, we do both. You know, for running, it's obviously just heart rate. The issue is the discrepancy between power and heart rate. If you're feeling bad one day, maybe you had a rough workout the week before, really rough week, maybe you're fighting off a cold, your heart rate can be elevated, can be drifting upwards. So if you're looking at specific training zones and you're drifting up, you know, your heart rate could be up 10 beats a day. So that's going to throw your zones all off. So you have to really be aware of your body and how you're feeling. Taking your resting heart rate every morning helps. If there's something off on your heart rate, if you're fighting off a cold or something, it'll be evident. You know, if you say every day I wake up and my resting heart rate is 50, and today I woke up and it was 63. You're probably getting a cold or something. You know, there's something going on there, or you're overtrained, you're working too hard, you need some rest, you need a passive rest day, just relax. So that's helpful to know, but that's one of the differences of heart rate versus power. Power is power always. You know, if you're saying I lose efficiency at 200 watts, you know, on a good day it's going to be 200 watts, on a bad day it's going to be 200 watts. So it is nice on the bike to have a power tap, to know what your force is and your power during the workouts, during the rides, as well as the races. So the test will basically tell you at any given heart rate and power what your efficiency is, how efficient are you. And we try to delay that anaerobic response as long as possible, as I mentioned, because you want to save those storage, the energy stores that you have in your body for when you need them, basically. So the idea now is if you're burning fat primarily up to a high enough heart rate, your body will, sorry, let me start again. Your body will, most people eat or have gels or drinks during their race or their rides, right? You guys eat and drink on the bike generally, or during a run. Your body can only absorb 300 calories of sugar or fuel during a workout. Okay, that's per hour. That's the most that it can absorb. So even if you're having 600 or 700 calories, you can really only absorb about 300 calories. So if you're inefficient and you're burning 900 calories an hour of sugar or carbohydrate, and you can only bring in 300, you're at a 600 calorie deficit every hour. So if you're doing an Ironman, you're going to bonk out eventually. You're not able to do that. So we want to get your body so efficient so that you're only burning around 300 calories of carbs per hour, and you can easily bring that right back in, and you'll never ever tap into those stores that you need, and they'll be there for when you need them later on in the race or in the workout or whatever.
So when you say you get your body to be only using 300 calories, you mean like slow down?
Well, it's not that you're not slowing down. No, I mean the idea is to stack up your body's metabolism like a pyramid. So first you want to work on your base efficiency and become very efficient at utilizing fat at a lower intensity. And eventually you'll train your body to be able to burn a high amount of fat even at a higher heart rate. I have a picture I'll show you.
And the test is just the first part, and then from that we work with Eric and Chris and Coach Garrett and develop a plan based on that.
Yes.
Where it does help build that base. And like for me, I'm a slow athlete, but I was always just running as, and in the beginning I was walking because of where my heart rate was set. The moment I started to jog, I was going above the threshold. And so for that period of training, it's actually kind of counterintuitive and frustrating.
It's very tedious initially because you're doing slow heart rates. Because you're teaching your body to recognize fat as a fuel source. So we have some people that they're initially they get to start at a heart rate of 120. When your heart rate gets above 120, stop and walk or slow down, change gear, whatever, depending on you're running. And it's tedious and it sucks. But if you do it for like 12-week period, 3 months, you're gonna raise your top end. It's like raising the tide of your efficiency. So
I'm a beginner at this whole heart rate on this other thing. What I just gathered from you guys on the heart rate thing. Your heart rate is supposed to be 120, and you exceed that, all of a sudden you start tapping that insulin.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you want to slow down to that, so you burn the fat reserves, the lactates or whatever, first. Okay.
So this kind of show the periodization here. This is someone maybe in the beginning. Okay, so their fat utilization is in green. Okay. So they peak very early and then they kind of fiddle out, and you can see they just rely on sugar to keep going. So their thresholds are very low. Okay. Now through training and through some progression, you can see that they have a little bit more fat efficiency and their anaerobic threshold is a little bit higher. but you know, they're still relying on mostly on carbohydrates. This is someone who's more well-trained. You can see that they're using fat. Now, if you can imagine that the bottom of these are your heart rate. So it starts low, say at 100, and goes up to, you know, 180 or 200, whatever. You can see that this person now is using a whole lot more fat and just relying on the carbohydrates for the end of that, you know, the event, the race, the workout, whatever you're doing.
So that's like, we go back one more.
Sure.
That's where it correlates to where you said we're using a grainer in our blocks, our nutrition in there. We only get 300 each hour. So at some point there, we run out of those carbs because we're overusing. We bonk.
You only have a certain amount that you can keep in your body, and you'll bonk out.
That way you use your okay.
Has anyone seen footage of the triathlete that finished the line with all apart and everything? That's completely shutting down. That person's body completely shut down. They used all the carbohydrate they had in their body. They had nothing left. You can see them. They have muscle spasms, back spasms. They just fall apart. So that's an extreme example, but I mean that can't happen. So this is basically someone you can see. Basically, like a lot of the spinning instructors and indoor cycling people I mentioned previously. You know, they maybe lose efficiency at a heart rate of 150. And 5 minutes into each of their spin classes, they're at 170. They're always above where they're efficient, so you can see that they're just bypassing the fat stores. Okay, they're just not being utilized. It's just going to stay there all the time. So, you know, you ever have you ever been on a workout where you feel like, man, I'm losing energy, I need some sugar, and then you quick take that gel or that goo, and you can go a little bit longer, and then it's like, man, I need some more sugar. You go again. Your body's just inefficient. You need to work on your efficiency. So this is someone who's more efficient. You can see they're actually going through and using those fat stores, which is delaying that anaerobic response. So this shows someone who is deconditioned or overtrained. Sure, go ahead.
Your example of the spin instructors, is that because they just do so many like interval and like high pace stuff that they're never in like a steady zone?
They're not in an aerobic zone, right? Yeah, they're not using their aerobic metabolism or their oxygen. They're just using anaerobic metabolism.
But they perhaps maybe change the design of their class so they did less, you know, high speed sprints or something.
Right.
There was potential that.
Right, we could do more of a sustained. They could change their class. They could also say, hey, that's my high intensity day. The take-home message is that you have to touch upon all the different heart rate levels: your lower intensity, your middle, and your upper end. Most people think that to be a good athlete, you have to only work on your top end and be hardcore and always push really hard, but then your bottom end will suffer. And also, if you think, well, I heard that I burn a lot of fat when my heart rate's at 120 or whatever, so I'm only ever going to stay at that high fat utilization point, your top end will suffer. So you really have to touch upon all the different zones. So for that example of that spin instructor or whatever, you know, say that you would save your hardcore days for the spin classes, and on the off days you would do a nice easy run or a nice easy walk or something lower intensity. So it's a balance. It also depends on the time of the year and the time of the season. You know, if these numbers will change throughout the season. So if you come in pre-season, you get your assessment done, you get your numbers, that might be different at the end of the season when it doesn't matter so much because you're peaking for that one event. So if you're not quite as efficient, it's okay, but it will change during the year. We recommend people testing about 4 times a year minimally. Some people more, some people do it twice, you know, if you're just looking to maintain. But we recommend once a quarter every 12 weeks just to maintain so you're reaching towards that goal for most athletes. I mean, I work with some coaches that want data every other week. Not because they expect too much to be different, but they have 26 data points over the course of a year versus 4, you know, or something like that. So it's more data to help that person. So it really depends on how much. If you're a data person, then you want to do it more often. If you don't really care, you just want someone to tell you where to go, that's 4 times a year is probably adequate. So this is an example of someone who's deconditioned. So you have your heart rate, okay, on the bottom. This black line is fat utilization or efficiency. You can see basically, these are fat calories per minute, so you can see they're only burning about 2 to 3 calories per minute of fat. This person's very deconditioned. You can see initially at a heart rate of 102 is the highest fat utilization. As their heart rate increases, their efficiency drops down. So you can see, I mean, this is only 150. At 150, they're not burning any fat at all. Okay, so next one, this one is someone who's more fit. You can see their fat utilization actually climbs as they get to their point. Right around heart rate 155 is where it starts coming down, but anything under like 50% efficiency is okay. So this person basically loses that right around this point here in the middle of the zone 3. As you can see, this is heart of AT at 175. Does everyone understand what AT means? Anaerobic threshold? It's kind of like when the gas light comes on in your car and you only have 30 miles left before you run out of gas. That's kind of what your AT is. You look at that as like the point of no return. So if you cross over this, you're not using any fat anymore. You're just using carbohydrate. But if you can, and you can move this number too. This is totally trainable. So you can do interval training. For this person here, what I would say is, you don't need any help in zone 1 right now. What you need help in is zone 2 and 3. So you can see the line steadily drops. So I would have them doing intervals between 155 and 165 and 155 and 175 on different days to kind of pick up this line of efficiency. So ideally, you can come up and plateau, and take your AT, you would basically drop down. This AT will come up as well. Any questions on this?
Why wouldn't the spin instructors then you talked about, if they're in that zone all the time, why wouldn't that happen to them?
Well, basically,
Why wouldn't their bodies learn to burn fat during those interval workouts they're doing?
it depends. I mean, it depends on the person, but it's really because they're not doing anything at the lower end. They're not developing this part of it. So they're a lot more like this, where they come in and their classes. 5 minutes into their class, they're at a heart rate of 160 or 170, and they're just burning up here all the time. So they never really develop anything. They're not trained. They're always up in this area, so that's where their body stays. I mean, it can get injuries. You can.
I think specifically to answer your question, it's a set point that you can reset that by proper training. So you can move that line.
Right. You can move it through training. It's all trainable. All the stuff we're talking about right now is trainable.
So if they're not training to move that line, they're going to just always be.
Yeah, you're always going to be stuck in that, that zone. And it's funny, actually, the resting assessment tells us a fuel mixture of fat and carbohydrate you're burning at rest. We recommend a 50-50 fat to carbohydrate fuel mixture as a minimum. If you're burning 50-50, that's okay. The American Dietetics Association recommends a 65-35 split of 65% fat and 35% carbohydrate at rest as a healthy individual. Most really well-trained athletes, pro athletes that I've tested are like 90-10, 80-20, something like that. So they're burning a high amount of fat. They're very rested and doing well. I've tested some people that are way overtrained, and it's like 10% fat, 90% carbohydrates. I see that a lot with bodybuilders, guys that they never take a day off. They're doing at least one muscle group every day. Their body's overtrained. They're not at a stable metabolism for their body to be healthy. So it's evident. You can see with testing right away. Usually I can look at someone's assessment and look at their profile and tell them exactly what they've been doing for training, what kind of stuff they like doing, what kind of stuff they don't like doing. It's just from looking at the numbers you can tell. This is someone who's ideally trained. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Other than that, those numbers are pretty much constant for everybody, and you just try to move the lines up and down, right? And just like that 130 and the 140. Like you want to stay below the 160 line or something on that other chart?
Oh, and this other one? Yeah.
Yeah, isn't everybody pretty much right there, and then you just got to try to, but you can go faster and keep your numbers lower, is all?
For this person, I mean, you'd have to really start at the ground up and start working in that zone 1, which is the heart of 102 to 121. Very boring, like that would really suck, but that's where you would have to start, because you're basically wanting this peak, you want it to be a bell curve, so you want to kind of come up, stabilize, that's your training, okay, that's where your race pace would be, that's where your interval days are, and then it would come down towards above your race pace where you would be.
Does everybody burn like the carbs at the same number?
No, everybody's different. Your metabolism is as unique as your fingerprint. Everybody has different numbers, overall caloric burn, percentages of fat.
Some people might be 140 and some are 150 and some are